biological hazards be introduced? They can be introduced from raw materials, from the process, if maybe pathogens survived the manufacturing process, if there was a lack of time and temperature controls, or due to the food's formulation. Pathogens can also be facility related. They can be introduced from a sanitary processing environment. There could be cross-contamination from raw and to cooked product through contaminated air, sewage, water, even from packaging materials. If there's a lack of container integrity, where pathogens could be introduced. So BSE is one of these biological hazards. BSE is a progressive neurological disease of cows, and it gets worse over time. It's caused by abnormal prions, and it damages the cow's brain and spinal cord. It can be transmitted by animal food. It has a very, very long incubation period, about 4 to 6 years before any symptoms actually show up. A sick cow has trouble walking, getting up. They might even act violent, so that's where they got the nickname I'm sure you guys heard of, mad cow disease. There's currently no treatment or vaccine for BSE, but you can actually see a cross-section of the brain here and see how that's affected. So they have this spongy appearance, and actually getting a look of the brain is the only way they can really diagnose this. Some of the rules that were established to control and prevent BSE include the rule put together in 1997. So this rule where basically FDA no longer allows for most parts of cows and certain other animals to be used to make food fed to cows. And then later on in 2008, they took even further steps and decided that high-risk cow parts like the brain and spinal cord were not to be used for any animal feed, even pet food. There's still some chance that there might be a mix-up. The good news is the US has a very, very negligible risk for BSE, so it's not as much of a concern, and it's more likely managed through our GMPs and prerequisite programs. Another potential biological hazard is Salmonella. So we'll talk a lot about Salmonella throughout the course. Again, Salmonella can be introduced in a lot of different ways. These ingredients that we're using, the raw meats, raw eggs, animal protein products, of course, we'll have this presence of Salmonella. And it could also be from the facility, from pests, dust, the equipment. So a lot of sources. And whether Salmonella causes illness in an animal will depend on the serotype. So keep in mind there are 2,500 different serotypes for Salmonella that differ by small variations. So these serotypes can cause disease in a particular species. Those are pathogenic for that species. So it might be important to differentiate for different serotypes if you are involved with livestock feed production. So if you take a look at the FDA compliance policy guide for Salmonella, it will go into detail on the expectations for Salmonella and how they differ by the type of animal food. So again, since Salmonella can cause harm to humans, if they come into contact with any serotype, Salmonella, for that reason, when it comes to pet food, we don't care about serotypes because any is going to be harmful and no Salmonella is acceptable. So here are some examples of different feeds, different foods that are, and the serotype of Salmonella that they are, it's hazardous. If you're interested, and if they don't have a current information on a particular serotype, they'll review on a case-by-case basis. Another potential biological hazard, this is Listeria monocytogenes, And this is an example of an emerging pathogen. So no one was really thinking about listeria before. The main focus was always Salmonella. But now with emergence of more of this fresh, raw, frozen pet food that's supposed to be healthier and better for our pets, listeria has become a concern. So listeria is quite unique because it can survive in both the presence and the absence of oxygen. It can grow in both frozen and refrigerated environments. It can, be introduced from raw agricultural commodities, again, from facility, cold, wet areas, and result in listeriosis in humans and animals. All right, so I added in this slide here. It's not in your manual, some extra information for the pet food facilities. So depending on if you're a dry processing facility or if you're a wet processing facility, you'll have different risk where this is regarding the environment. So you might have more of a Salmonella environment risk if you're in a dry environment, because that's the kind of environment Salmonella thrives, versus wet, cool facility, listeria would be your main risk. Okay, so we touched on biological hazards. We'll get into chemical hazards.